Welcome, traveler. You found the slumbering cosmos. Tonight, we are going to follow the life of a star. All of it, from its quiet birth in a cold cloud of dust, through its long and steady middle years, to its gentle death, and to the strange and beautiful things it leaves behind. It is a life story, really, and like all the best life stories, it moves slowly, and it is full of light, and it ends not in fear, but in a kind of peace. A star is born, and lives and dies across spans of time so vast that to us it seems to hold perfectly still. But everything up there is changing, always gently, on a time scale of millions and billions of years. Tonight, we get to watch a whole such life unfold from beginning to end in the space of a single quiet night. And I promise you, there is nothing frightening in any of it. Even the endings are soft. Even the deaths are beautiful. A star does not suffer, and it does not fear its ending. And by the time we reach the last chapter, I think you will find that the death of a star is one of the most peaceful things in all the universe. So settle in. Set down the day, all of it, the done and the undone. None of it needs you tonight. It will keep until morning. Let the bed take your whole weight, all of it, so that you're holding nothing up, carrying nothing, bracing against nothing at all. Feel how the mattress rises to meet you, how it supports every part of you, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet, asking nothing in return. You can let it hold you completely. There is nowhere you need to be tonight, but exactly here. Feel your shoulders drop, sliding down and away from your ears. Feel your hands fall open, the fingers uncurling, softening. Let your jaw come loose, your tongue rest gently, your brow grow smooth. And let a slow warmth begin at the top of your head and move down through you. Down through your face and your neck and your chest and your arms, down through your belly and your legs, all the way to your feet. And as it moves, let it carry the whole day out of you, gently down and away into the dark where it can no longer reach you. And let your breathing slow on its own. Don't force it, just notice it. The soft rise, the slower fall. And let each breath out grow a little longer, a little gentler than the one before. Take one slow breath in and let it go all the way out. Let's begin at the very beginning, in the dark where all stars come from. Every star begins in a cloud. Not a cloud like the ones in Earth's sky. A cloud of the deepest space, a vast, cold, drifting expanse of gas and dust, hanging in the dark between the stars, so enormous that light itself would take decades to cross it. Astronomers call these places molecular clouds, but they have a gentler common name, stellar nurseries, because this is where stars are born. These clouds are among the coldest places in the entire universe. Hundreds of degrees below freezing, colder than almost anything you could imagine, so cold and so dark that for millions of years, nothing much happens in them at all. They simply drift and turn slowly in the deep, quiet, great dim, cold banks of gas, mostly hydrogen, the simplest and oldest substance there is left over from the birth of the universe itself. And they are beautiful, these clouds, when a nearby star lights their edges, glowing in soft pinks and deep blues, sculpted into towering pillars and folds and valleys, kilometers beyond counting tall. The Eagle Nebula, the Orion Nebula, the great clouds of Carina. If you have ever seen those famous images of glowing cosmic towers, those are stellar nurseries, and inside them, hidden in the densest, darkest folds, stars are quietly beginning. Because in a cloud that vast, the gas is never perfectly even. Here and there, by chance, a region grows a little denser than the rest. And a denser region has a little more gravity. And a little more gravity pulls in a little more gas, which makes it denser still, which gives it more gravity still. And so, over hundreds of thousands of years, slowly, patiently, without any hurry at all, a small part of the great cold cloud begins, gently, to gather itself together, to fall ever so slowly inward toward its own center. Nothing has ignited yet. There is no light, no warmth. There's only a slow, dark, patient gathering in the cold. The very first stirring of a star, taking place in absolute silence, over spans of time longer than our whole species has existed. Rest here a while, in the cold and quiet cloud, where everything begins. There is no rush. The star is in no hurry to be born. Let us gather slowly in the dark and see what comes next. As the cloud gathers, something quietly extraordinary begins to happen at its heart. All that gas, falling inward, falling together, begins to grow warm. It is a simple thing, really. When you squeeze a gas, it heats up, and here gravity is squeezing an entire collapsing cloud, tighter and tighter, denser and denser at the center. And so the heart of the gathering cloud, which was among the coldest places in the universe, slowly begins to warm, and then to glow. A dim, deep red at first, buried in dust, invisible from outside. A warmth in the dark, growing. We call this glowing, gathering heart a protostar. A star that is not yet a star. It sits at the center of a great slowly spinning disk of leftover gas and dust, for the cloud was turning as it fell, and the turning flattened it into a disk, the way a spinning lump of dough flattens into a pizza. The protostar glows at the center, and around it, the disk turns and turns, warm and dark and patient. And in that turning disk, another quiet miracle is beginning. The dust grains, drifting in their slow orbits, begin to bump into one another and to stick gently and to grow. Grains become pebbles. Pebbles become boulders. Boulders, over millions of years, become worlds. This is how planets are made. Not in a moment, but in a slow accretion, a patient gathering of dust in a stone in the warm, dark disk around a newborn star. Our own Earth formed exactly this way, 4.5 billion years ago, out of the leftover dust of the disk that surrounded the young sun. The ground beneath your house was once dust drifting in a disk around a star that had not yet begun to shine. Everything you have ever stood on, everything you have ever touched, was gathered out of such a disk, slowly, patiently, grain by grain, in the warm dark around a gathering star. For now, though, the protostar only glows and gathers and grows warmer at its heart. It is almost ready. It is almost a star. Just a little more gathering, just a little more warmth. Let it grow in the turning dark. We're almost at the moment of first light. And then, at last, the moment comes. At the very center of the protostar, the temperature climbs and climbs, past 1,000 degrees, past 100,000, past 1,000,000, and then at around 10 million degrees, something switches on that will not switch off again for billions of years. The hydrogen at the core begins to fuse. Under that unimaginable heat and pressure, the nuclei of hydrogen atoms, the simplest particles there are pressed so close together that they begin to merge, to fuse into helium, and in the merging, they release energy. A tiny amount from each, but there are more atoms in the core of a star than there are grains of sand on all the beaches of the Earth, many times over, and they are fusing constantly, and so the energy released is beyond all imagining. A star's core becomes a controlled, self-sustaining furnace, releasing the energy of billions of nuclear reactions every second, forever, or near enough to forever that it makes no difference to us. And that energy pushes outward. It floods out from the core as light and heat, pressing against the crushing inward pull of gravity, and for the first time, holding it back. The collapse stops. The gathering ends. The star, at last, finds its balance. Gravity pulling in, the fusion light pushing out, the two of them settled against each other in a perfect, stable equilibrium that can last for billions of years. The star has ignited. It is shining now, truly shining, with its own light, born from its own heart. The surrounding cloud is slowly blown away by the new star's light and wind. And where there was only cold, dark gas, there is now a sun, burning steady and bright, with its new-made planets circling it in the clearing dark. A star is born, not in violence, but in balance, not in a bang, but in the quiet reaching of a stable, patient equilibrium that it will hold faithfully for almost its entire life. This is the moment every star lives most of its life within, this calm, balanced, steady shining. Let's rest in it. The hard part, the gathering, is over. Now comes the long, peaceful middle. The long middle of a star's life is called the main sequence, and it is the calmest, steadiest, most peaceful phase of all. For our own sun, this phase lasts about 10 billion years. 10 billion years of shining of very nearly the same brightness, the same warmth, the same steady output, day after day, age after age. The sun is about halfway through this phase now. It is roughly 4.5 billion years old, a comfortable middle age, and it will go on shining calmly and steadily for about 5 billion years more before anything begins to change. It is the most reliable thing there is. It has risen without fail every single morning for longer than there has been life on Earth to see it rise. And this steadiness is not an accident. It is built into the very nature of a star, protected by a beautiful, self-correcting balance. If the core ever burns a little too hot, the extra energy makes the star swell slightly, which cools the core back down. If it burns a little too cool, the star contracts slightly, which heats the core back up. The star holds its own steadiness, automatically, gently, correcting itself across the ages, like a sleeper whose breathing settles naturally into an even, unbroken rhythm. Nothing tends it. It simply balances itself and shines and holds. All across the sky tonight, most of the stars you can see are in this calm middle phase. Steady suns, holding their balance, shining without drama, each one warming its own family of worlds. It is the ordinary condition of a star, this long, patient, reliable shining, and it is the condition that makes everything else possible. Life needs a steady star. It needs billions of years of unchanging warmth to arise and to grow and to become something that can eventually look up and wonder about the star that made it. The sun's long, boring, faithful steadiness is the reason you are here to hear this. And consider what is actually happening deep in the heart of that steady star, all through those calm billions of years. Every second, in the core, an unimaginable number of hydrogen nuclei are quietly merging into helium, releasing their small flares of energy. And that energy then begins the longest, slowest journey imaginable, working its way outward through the dense body of the star, taking not seconds, not years, but tens of thousands of years to reach the surface and fly free as light. So the sunlight of a steady star is always ancient by the time it shines. The calm you see on its surface is the calm of something whose every impulse takes ages to travel, ages to arrive, a being so vast and so slow that nothing in it is ever hurried, nothing is ever sudden. Everything moves at the patient pace of tens of thousands of years. That is what steadiness looks like up close. Not stillness, but a motion so slow and so deep that it appears from outside to be perfect peace. And perhaps that is what rest truly is as well. Not the absence of all motion, but a settling into a rhythm so slow and so deep that the surface at last goes calm. There's a lesson in that, I think, gentle enough to fall asleep to. The most important thing a star ever does is not the drama of its birth or the beauty of its death. It is the long, quiet, unremarkable steadiness in between, the billions of years of simply, faithfully showing up. Steadiness is its own kind of greatness. There is nothing more powerful in all the universe than something calm that simply continues. Rest in the steady light of the long middle. We will stay here a while where nothing changes and all is calm. Then, slowly, we will follow the story onward. Let us look for a while at our own star, the sun, because its story is our story too, and because it is a good and gentle one. The sun is not a special star. It is not among the largest, nor the brightest, nor the rarest. It is an ordinary yellow star, one of hundreds of billions in our galaxy alone, unremarkable in every way but one. It is ours. It is the star we came from. Every scrap of warmth you have ever felt, every plant that has ever grown, every breath of wind and every drop of rain, every calorie of food you have ever eaten traces back to the light of this one ordinary star, pouring out steadily across 93 million miles of empty space to fall gently on a small blue world. And it is enormous in a way that is hard to hold in the mind. More than 1 million Earths could fit inside it. Its surface, which looks so smooth and calm from a distance, is an ocean of glowing plasma, churning and boiling, with great arcs of fire leaping and falling back along invisible magnetic lines. And yet, From that violent surface, across all that distance, comes only gentle warmth, the softest, kindest warmth, the warmth of a spring afternoon, the warmth on your face when you close your eyes in the sun. The light that touches you left the sun's surface only 8 minutes ago, but it was born far earlier than that. The energy in a single ray of sunlight began in the sun's core and spent. This is almost impossible to believe. Perhaps 100,000 years slowly working its way outward through the dense interior, bouncing from particle to particle, before it finally reached the surface and flew free across space in 8 quick minutes. The warmth on your face tonight is 100,000 years old. It began its journey before your species existed, and it has been traveling ever since, patiently, just to reach you. The sun has been doing this without a single missed day for 4.5 billion years. And it will go on doing it steadily, calmly, for billions of years more, long after tonight, long after all of us, warming worlds that do not yet have names. There is something deeply reassuring in a thing so steady, so patient, so faithful. You could trust a thing like that. You can rest beneath a thing like that. Let the old, gentle warmth of the sun settle over you now, and carry the story onward to the smallest and most patient stars of all. Not all stars live the same length of life. And the strangest thing is this: the smaller and dimmer a star, the longer it lives. The great bright stars, the blue-white giants that blaze so fiercely they can be seen across half the galaxy, burn through their fuel in a magnificent hurry, and live only a few million years, a mere flicker by cosmic standards. But the small, cool, dim red stars, the red dwarfs, are so frugal, so gentle in their burning, that they last almost beyond imagining. A red dwarf may be only 1/10 the mass of our sun, glowing a soft, deep ember red, so faint that not one of them can be seen from Earth without a telescope, though they are by far the most common stars in the universe, 3 out of every 4 stars that exist. And because they are so small and burn so slowly and so carefully, mixing their fuel thoroughly and wasting almost nothing, they can shine steadily not for billions of years, but for trillions. Some of them will still be burning 10 trillion years from now, 1,000 times the entire current age of the universe. Think of what that means. Every bright star in the sky tonight will have long since died before a single red dwarf reaches even its middle age. When our own sun has swelled and faded and cooled to a dark cinder, the little red dwarfs will not even have begun to change. They will still be glowing softly, faithfully, warming their own quiet worlds in a universe grown old and dark around them. The last campfires still burning, long after all the brighter fires have gone out. The nearest star to our own sun is one of these. Proxima Centauri, just over 4 light years away, a small dim red dwarf, with at least one small world circling it in its narrow band of warmth. It is one of the most patient objects in existence. It was here long before humans, and it will still be here, essentially unchanged, in a future so distant that the mind simply cannot reach it. There is a quiet wisdom in the red dwarfs, and it is a restful one. They do not blaze. They do not hurry. They do not try to be the brightest thing in the sky. They simply burn low and steady and gentle, and by doing so, they outlast everything. To last, you need not burn bright. You need only burn calm and keep burning. Let that settle into you tonight. The deep patience of the small red stars, burning softly through the ages. And let us return now to the sun-like stars and follow one gently toward its ending. Every star that lives must one day change. And for a star like our sun, the change, when it finally comes, is slow and strange, and, I promise you, not to be feared. After billions of years of steady shining, a sun-like star begins at last to run low on the hydrogen fuel at its core. It has fused nearly all of it into helium, and as the core's fuel runs thin, the perfect balance it has held for so long begins, gently, to shift. What happens next unfolds across many millions of years, so slowly that on any human timescale, it would seem like no change at all. The core, no longer producing quite enough energy to hold itself up, contracts and heats. And that new heat causes the outer layers of the star to swell, to expand enormously outward and outward. The star grows and grows, and as its vast surface spreads out over a greater and greater area, it cools and reddens, shifting from yellow-white to a deep, warm, glowing orange-red. The star has become a red giant, and it is now truly enormous. A sun-like star in this phase can swell to more than 100 times its original size, large enough that if you placed it where our sun is, its glowing surface would reach out past the orbit of Venus, perhaps even to the Earth. It becomes one of the largest things a star can be, a vast, cool, softly glowing giant, hundreds of times wider than the star it once was, shining now with a deep and gentle red light. This is the fate that waits for our own sun some 5 billion years from now. It will swell into a red giant and grow and glow deep red, and the inner planets will be transformed forever. It sounds, when you first hear it, like a frightening thing. But hold it the way it deserves to be held. It is 5 billion years away. That is a span of time so vast that all of recorded human history and all of prehistory and the entire age of complex life on Earth would fit into it hundreds of times over, with room to spare. Between now and then lies more time than the mind can hold. The sun's ending has no claim on tonight. It is a story about a future so distant, it is almost the same as never. And even the red giant phase is not an ending, but a slow and beautiful transformation. The star is not dying in fear or violence. It is simply, gently, becoming the next thing it was always going to become. Let us follow it softly to the quietest and most beautiful death in the universe. When a sun-like star reaches the end of its red giant phase, it does not explode. It does not shatter. It lets go gently, and in the letting go, it creates one of the most beautiful objects in all the cosmos. Slowly, over tens of thousands of years, the swollen red giant begins to shed its outer layers. Not violently, gently, like a long exhalation like a slow breath released into the dark. The star simply, softly breathes its outer atmosphere away, layer by layer, casting off great glowing shells and rings of gas that drift outward into space, expanding, spreading, thinning in slow and graceful clouds. And the hot, exposed core left behind at the center, small now and dense and intensely hot, shines fiercely, and its light pours out into the surrounding shells of cast-off gas and lights them up from within. They glow in blues and greens and reds and golds, in rings and shells and delicate glowing structures of impossible beauty spreading softly across space. We call these objects planetary nebulae, a misleading name from long ago, for they have nothing to do with planets. What they truly are is the gentle death bloom of a sun-like star, its final exhalation made visible, glowing in the dark. The Ring Nebula, the Helix Nebula, so beautiful and so intricate that it is sometimes called the Eye of God. The cat's eye, the butterfly, the countless glowing shells that dot our galaxy. Every one of them is a sun-like star, gently dying, breathing out its outer self in rings of colored light that will drift and glow for tens of thousands of years before slowly fading into the dark. This is how our own sun will end, in the deep, deep future, not in fire and catastrophe, but in this, a slow, quiet exhalation, a blooming of soft-colored light, a gentle release of everything it once held, drifting outward into space. It is quite genuinely one of the most beautiful and peaceful deaths in all the universe. If you must picture the end of the sun, picture this. Not a violence, but a flower. Not a scream, but a sigh. A slow bloom of gentle light, released into the dark. And the gas it releases does not vanish. It drifts outward, enriching the space between the stars, and one day, somewhere, it may gather again into a new cold cloud, a new stellar nursery, and give birth to new stars and new worlds. The death of one star becomes the raw material for the next. Nothing is truly lost. It is only passed on. Rest in the soft glow of the dying star's last light. There is more to see, for the greatest stars end quite differently, but nothing tonight will be any less gentle to fall asleep to than this. But what is left at the very center when the sun-like star has breathed away its outer layers? What remains? A white dwarf, the small, dense, quietly glowing core of the former star. All that is left when everything else has drifted away, about the size of the Earth, but containing much of the mass of a star, packed so densely that a single spoonful of it would weigh as much as a truck. It no longer fuses anything. Its furnace has gone out. It simply sits there at the center of the fading nebula, glowing with its own leftover heat, like an ember pulled from a fire that will take an eternity to cool. And cool it will, but with the same infinite patience as everything else in the sky. A white dwarf cools so slowly that it takes billions upon billions of years to fade. Longer, in fact, than the current age of the universe. Not a single white dwarf that has ever formed has yet had time to fully cool. Every one of them is still out there, still gently glowing, still radiating away the last warmth of a star that died long ago. They are the quiet embers of the cosmos, cooling in the dark, in no hurry at all, across spans of time longer than the universe has yet existed. This, then, is the complete life of a star like our sun, born in a cold, dark cloud, gathered slowly over hundreds of thousands of years, ignited into steady shining, holding its calm balance for 10 billion years, swelling gently into a red giant, breathing out its outer self in a bloom of colored light, and settling at last into a small white ember, cooling softly, forever in the quiet dark. It is a good life, a star's life, long and steady and warm and useful, warming worlds, making the elements of life, and ending not in terror, but in beauty and in peace. There are far worse ways to be than to be a star. But some stars, the greatest ones, live and die on a grander scale entirely. And their endings, though more dramatic, are just as beautiful and, from the safe distance of imagination on a quiet night, just as peaceful to behold. Let's go and see how the giants end. The great stars, the massive ones, 10 or 20 or 30 times heavier than our sun, live fast and burn bright and die young. And when they die in a most spectacular way the universe has to offer. A massive star, like all stars, spends its life fusing hydrogen into helium in its core. But a massive star has so much more gravity, so much more crushing pressure at its heart, that when the hydrogen runs low, it does not simply swell and fade. Instead, its core contracts and heats until it grows hot enough to fuse the helium into carbon. And when the helium runs low, it contracts and heats again and begins to fuse the carbon into heavier elements still, neon and oxygen and silicon. Each stage faster than the last, each element heavier than the last, building up in layers like the rings of an onion, all the way up to iron at the very center. And at iron, the building stops. For iron is the one element that will not release energy when it fuses. It only takes energy in. And so, when the core of a great star becomes iron, the furnace that has held it up for millions of years suddenly has nothing left to burn. In a single instant, less than a second, the core, no longer able to support itself, collapses. An object larger than the Earth falls inward upon itself in a fraction of a heartbeat until it is crushed into a ball only kilometers across. And then the star rebounds. The infalling outer layers crash down upon that crushed and rigid core and bounce violently outward, and the star detonates in the most powerful explosion in the universe. A supernova. For a few brief weeks, this single dying star shines as brightly as an entire galaxy of 100 billion stars, bright enough to be seen across the whole width of the cosmos, bright enough that when one appeared in Earth's sky 1,000 years ago, people saw it in the daytime. And here is the tender secret hidden inside that violence. The explosion forges, in its final furious instant, the heaviest elements of all, the gold, the silver, the uranium, and blasts them out across space, together with all the oxygen and carbon and iron the star made across its life. Every atom of iron in your blood, every atom of calcium in your bones, Every scrap of oxygen you're breathing right now was made inside a star and scattered across space by exactly this kind of death. You are quite literally made of the ashes of exploded stars. The supernova is not only an ending, it is the great seeding, the way the universe scatters the stuff of life and worlds and future stars across the dark. Even the most violent death in the cosmos, seen from far enough away, across enough time, is a kind of gift. Let's settle softly, and let us see, now, the strange and wonderful things a supernova leaves behind. When a great star explodes as a supernova, its outer layers are flung across space in a vast, glowing, expanding cloud. A supernova remnant, tangled and beautiful, that will drift and glow for tens of thousands of years, like the Crab Nebula, still expanding today from a star we watched explode in the year 1064. But at the very center, where the core collapsed, something remains. And what remains is among the strangest matter in all the universe. If the star was massive, but not too massive, the crushed core becomes a neutron star. Imagine taking more mass than our entire sun and crushing it down into a ball only about 20 kilometers across, the size of a city. That is a neutron star. It is so dense that a single sugar cube-sized piece of it would weigh as much as all of humanity combined. It is essentially one single, unimaginably dense atomic nucleus, the size of a mountain, spinning in the dark. And spinning is exactly what it does. As the great core collapsed, it spun faster and faster, the way a spinning skater draws in her arms, and speeds up until a neutron star can spin many times every second, some of them hundreds of times every second, whirling in the dark with a regularity so perfect it puts our finest clocks to shame. And many of them beam out lighthouse-like pulses of radio waves as they spin, sweeping across space. And when those beams sweep across the Earth, we detect them as steady, rhythmic pulses, tick, 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 as reliable as a heartbeat. We call these spinning stars pulsars, and the first one ever found pulse so perfectly that its discoverers, half joking, briefly wondered if it might be a signal from another civilization. There is something strangely soothing in a pulsar, a dead star, spinning quietly in the dark, keeping perfect time, ticking out the seconds with more precision than any clock ever built by human hands, and asking nothing of anyone. All across the galaxy, these small, dense remnants spin and pulse and keep their steady rhythm, the metronomes of the cosmos, marking time in the dark long after the stars that made them have died. Let that steady rhythm settle over you now, like a slow and distant heartbeat. Tick and tick and tick, the patient timekeeping of the dead stars. There is one last kind of ending left to see, the deepest of them all, and then we will come home. The very greatest stars, the most massive of all, end in the deepest way the universe knows. When a truly enormous star collapses, its core is so heavy that not even the incredible density of a neutron star can hold it up. Nothing can. The collapse does not stop at a city-sized ball. It continues past every limit, crushing the core down and down, until it becomes something from which not even light can escape. A black hole. We have visited black holes on other nights and found them not to be monsters, but simply gravity made complete, a place where a great star's mass has been gathered so tightly that it has, in a sense, closed a door around itself and stepped quietly out of the visible universe. The star does not vanish. Its mass is still there, still pulling, still holding its planets and its neighbors in their orbits. But its light is gone, folded away forever behind the horizon of its own gravity. And there's a strange gentleness even here at the deepest ending of all. The star that became a black hole is, in a way, the most permanent thing it could possibly be. It will not fade like a white dwarf, or spin down like a pulsar, or drift apart like a nebula. It will simply remain patient and dark and unimaginably long-lived, for spans of time so vast that the numbers lose all meaning, outlasting the galaxies, outlasting the last of the stars, one of the very last things that will still exist when the universe has grown old and cold and quiet. And then across time, longer still, even it will slowly, softly evaporate, releasing itself back into the dark, one faint particle of light at a time, until at last it too is gone. From a cold cloud of hydrogen, to a blazing star, to a spinning remnant or a silent black hole. The life of a star spans the whole range of what is possible, from the gentlest of beginnings to the deepest of endings, and every single stage of it, seen from the safe distance of a quiet night, is beautiful and calm and utterly without malice. The universe is not trying to frighten anyone. It is simply living out its long, slow life, one star at a time. Let the deepest quiet of the black holes settle over you now. That vast, patient, permanent stillness, the calmest thing there is. And then, gently, let's come home. Let's come back now from the deep places to your own small warm world, in your own bed in this one quiet night. We have followed a whole life tonight. Many lives, really. The slow gathering in the cold cloud. The first ignition and the birth of light. The long, calm, faithful middle. The gentle swelling into a red giant, and the soft bloom of the dying nebula and the cooling white ember. The blazing giants and their brilliant deaths, and the spinning remnants and silent black holes they leave behind. The whole life story of the stars, from beginning to end, unfolding across billions and billions of years. And here's the thing I most want you to carry down into sleep. You're a part of this story, not separate from it, part of it. The iron in your blood was forged in the heart of a dying star and scattered by its death. The calcium in your bones, the oxygen in every breath, the carbon that makes up so much of you, all of it was made inside stars over billions of years and cast out across space by their endings and gathered up again into a cloud and a disk and a world and eventually into you. You're made of stardust, not as a poem, as a simple, literal fact. You are the universe's own material, briefly gathered together into someone who can lie in the dark and hear the story of where they came from. And every star you have ever seen is somewhere in this story too. The ones just being born deep in glowing clouds. The steady middle-aged suns, holding their calm balance, as our sun holds its own tonight. The old red giants, swelling toward their gentle ends. The white embers, cooling in the dark. The patient little red dwarfs that will outlast almost everything. All of them up there right now, living out their slow, quiet lives, needing nothing, asking nothing, shining softly whether or not anyone is watching. And there's a kind of comfort, too, in knowing that the whole story keeps turning. Nothing in it is wasted. The gas a dying star breathes out becomes the cloud that births the next one. The heavy elements forged in one star's death become the worlds and the oceans and the living things that gather around the stars still to come. It is a great slow cycle, turning and turning across the ages. Birth from death, light from darkness, new stars rising from the scattered ashes of the old. And it has been turning since the universe was young, and it will keep turning long after tonight, gently, endlessly, without ever needing to be watched or tended or worried over. You are one turn of that great wheel. So is every star. So will be every star to come. And there is nothing you need to do about any of it tonight but rest and be a part of it and let it turn. The sun will rise tomorrow, steady and faithful, as it has for 4.5 billion years. The stars will keep their slow appointments across the ages. And you can let go now and rest, you, made of stardust, lying safe on a small blue world beneath a sky full of quiet, living, dying, patient stars, none of which need you awake to continue. So close your eyes now, if they are not already closed. Breathe in slowly and out even more slowly. You are made of stars, and the stars are calm tonight, and they're holding you the way they have held everything since the very beginning, gently, patiently, without effort, without fear. The cosmos is slumbering, and so are you. Good night, traveler. Sleep, small child of the stars.